on, but I guess.
Hello, welcome everybody.
Welcome to the Ides of March, first year anniversary. We've been doing this a year now, and the past year we would do this. We would talk about synchronous dates in history that people didn't know about, and then we would also talk about good news about the Trump administration that the mainstream media won't report on. But we're going to try kind of switch gears for the next year, because we've talked about all the, the dates from each month that jumped out of this, and I don't know if we could do that again for another year. So we're just going to talk about.
But we're going to talk. One of the things we're going to talk about is Hoaxed Movie by Mike Cernovich, and this thing's a game changer. It's not a partisan movie, and it's partisan in a way, but it's going to be very important. A lot of people see it, and there's a reason why it's being ignored by people on all sides.
Yeah.
And so we want to play a clip of it from the end of it with Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah, I just saw James O'Keefe tweet this clip right before we went live, and I thought that would be perfect to show you. It's just a couple of minutes. I thought I had it up. Hold on. All right, now I have to find it. I know that Jack had tweeted it. Hold on, just a second. Sorry.
This is how you know that we are not a scripted show.
Right. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Can't hear it. Is it not? Oh.
Told by the media what is right, what is wrong, what to...
Hold on just a second. I'm starting over.
By the media what the world is. We are told by the media what is right, what is wrong, what to believe, who to love, who to hate. These are just shadows on the wall of the cave. And then the thought comes to his mind as he regards this beauty, and he says, I must share this.
Thanks for sharing.
With the people below, with my friends, my companions, my compatriots chained in the cave. So he takes a last look to drink in the glory of everything that he sees. And then, with excitement, with joy, with anticipation, he turns back, down, into the cave. And he starts to tell everyone chained to the wall, this is not real, this is not real, these are illusions. And he reaches down and he tries to break their chains. And they do not thank him. They do not praise him. They do not admire his wisdom and his courage. They fight him. They call him mad. They call him deranged, delusional, disruptive, seditious, dangerous. And he faces the choice that we all face when we learn the truth. Do we stay where we are hated, down in the dungeons, among the enslaved, mentally? Do we stay among those fixated on their screens who will not tear their eyes away from a manufactured reality to look at the world itself? Or do we go and climb those stairs again to imbibe all the glory and beauty of the natural world, leaving behind those who fight us for bringing them the truth? I say stand and fight. What is the glory of the world if we must drink it in solitude? What is the beauty of the planet if we must view it alone? We have an obligation, if we have seen the truth, to wrestle the lies from the minds of those stuck in the cave. The cave is the manufactured reality of those who would control us by controlling what?
So incredible. If you haven't seen Hoaxed, the film, yet, you need to go to hoaxmovie.com and view it. I don't think it costs much.
I think it's like $5.
$5. It is so profound, and this last scene, the cave, is incredible, and it's so true.
And he talks about a choice. And we wrote a blog post about this at redpillsentinel.com, and you want to go to the beginning. So we're talking about, there's a battle going on right now in our country, and it's a lot like back in 1775, 1776, there's patriots and there's Tories. And so we're just going to read to you a little bit from our blog post about, a lot of people don't know what Tories are, but we're going to talk about what today's Tories are.
Right. You know what patriots are, but the Tories were the British loyalists. And if you go to the dictionary, the dictionary definition of a Tory is a supporter of traditional political and social institutions against the forces of reform. A political conservative.
And did you catch that last part? Against the forces of reform.
And several names come to mind.
But Wiktionary has a good...
Oh yeah, Wiktionary. So it's a member or supporter of the British Conservative Party, which evolved from royalist politicians associated with upholding the rights of the monarchy and the privileges of the established church. So replace monarchy with elites and the established church with the mainstream media. And then think of names like Bill Kristol, Stephen Hayes, Jonah Goldberg, David French, Eric Erickson, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck.
Charlie Sykes.
Yeah.
There's many. It's a big church.
It's a big church.
And so we call that, you notice privilege, royalist, establishment, monarchy, and the church. And the church today, of the loyalists to us, is the emperor with no clothes, mainstream media. This is what they are. They're all lined up against who? Against the republic as it was established, against us, the people.
And that's where our message for this Periscope comes in. So what we want you to take away from this Periscope, you guys that are watching and anybody else that watches the replay, our message is to the titans of conservatism, like Rush Limbaugh, like Sean Hannity, like Ann Coulter,
Laura Ingraham.
Yep, Laura.
And we named Sarah Palin, Lou Dobbs, and we put
Mark Levin.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson. We want to get this message out.
We want to get this message
folks.
to them because we are in. I titled the name of the blog post, "We pledge together our lives, our fortunes, our sacred brands."
With a big question mark.
With the question mark, because
it wasn't sacred brands. It was
our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people on the right, like Jack Posobiec, Ali, Laura Loomer. We have a lot of people on the influential people who on the right on social media, on new media, who are putting points on the board. They're actually doing the work that our GOP should be doing, that they're not. And they're not getting a whole lot of support. They're not getting any support from these titans of conservatism. And,
Jessie Jane Duff was going to call. She can't Periscope.
Okay.
But I'll try to catch up with her.
Anyway, our message is, we're in tumultuous times where they're killing babies full term. All kinds of things are going on right now that this is the American Revolution 2.0, except that we already have a form of government. We already have that form of government that our founding fathers fought and died for, but it's a constant battle to maintain that, and we're in a new kind of war. And you've got a lot of people, we've got a lot of soldiers that are out in the trenches fighting this war, and it just feels like all of the people that we have followed for decades and admired and watched and supported, they're not supporting those people who are actually putting points on the board. You'll go on the radio, you'll go on TV, and you'll complain and whine, about the lame GOP or, the other people in the MSM, but you're not spending your time building up people.
All of these other patriots, and
that could change that. And we wonder if there's some if there's some written rule for the
in
Rush
their contracts for Rush Limbaugh, for whoever,
or Ingram, for whoever, that prevents you from mentioning these names, because it cannot be a coincidence that they never mention these names, and these are names that are as much a part of our lives as Rush Limbaugh now.
And here's what we were kind of looking at there. In our blog post, we use a lot of, we pull quotes from Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech. And everybody remembers "Give me liberty or give me death." As for me, give me liberty or give me death. But there are so many profound lines throughout this whole speech. It was a short speech in Virginia before the war started. And one of the great ones is, "The question before us is one of awful moment to this country. Nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery." And that's what the choice we have: patriots and Tories, and against slavery or freedom.
Right.
And so what we're looking at is, back in the Revolutionary War time, leading up to the Revolutionary War, the pamphleteers, they helped us. They helped us get a cohesive message and get a cohesive line, because back in the 1770s there was no internet. So there are thousands of people out there doing this kind of work, but we wanted to get into a couple of other things before we start into the pamphleteers and modern day pamphleteers. We wanted to talk about what's happening today with, we got Trumpy Bear back here, and that's kind of our mascot.
Yeah.
You can't see him over here on the Facebook feed, but here's our little Trumpy Bear. And, Trump is just a man too. We're all just...
And I know a lot of people, we get just, I'm not going to say I'm disgusted with Trump. I'm not disgusted with the Trump.
Discouraged.
I get discouraged. He's not doing everything that I want him to do, but he's just one man. Ronald Reagan was just one man. And that's why the whole Q phenomenon, bugs me, because these people that believe some other entity is going to save things, it keeps people complacent. And the question before us is not only are we asking, the titans of conservatism to unite with all of these people who, for some reason or another you won't let come across your lips, but what are we doing? We're a republic, and for a republic to be successful,
all the citizens have to be involved.
You have to be involved. Hello. You were on the last scope, weren't you?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Daniel Day. We have to be involved in our communities, and everybody can be involved in their local communities, and we're not. Most people don't even know who their elected officials are locally.
And so we have this message to these titans of conservatism, and this is by no any means an exhaustive list, but we picked a few strong ones, these ones we named earlier. And I was listening to Rush Limbaugh last week, and he asked a question: are the people on our side ready for what the left is going to do? And I got upset with that, because I'm like, there are people on our side fighting this fight for the last 2 years, almost 3 years.
Yeah, who not only know, are ready, they're doing what needs to be done right now to defeat the left.
The research, the reporting.
Thanks.
But we wanted to, we're about to get into the pamphleteers, but we wanted to kind of highlight what's going on with censorship and freedom of expression, free speech. It's being squelched by the left, and by the titans of tech are shutting down a lot of platforms, and they're going after Julian Assange. Now, you may have your opinions about Julian Assange, but to me, I think he's a political prisoner right now, and his politics are showing everybody all the stuff. We need to be. In Patrick Henry's speech, he talked about, I want to know the whole truth. I know that a lot of the truth, if we knew the truth about a lot of these folks in this world, people on both sides would be hugely disappointed. And we need to see more. Julian Assange with WikiLeaks and the stuff that they released, whether you call it a hack or whatever it was, I think it was turned over to him. He released a lot of info and opened up gates that things are still unfolding on these stories about what happened before the election in 2016.
But I think it's a fact that if Julian Assange hadn't released Podesta leaks, we would never have known how corrupt the Democrats were, that they rigged their primary. It's my opinion that Trump wouldn't have won if Podesta leaks hadn't happened. So Julian Assange they're not doing anything different than, say, CNN or some other outlet that is supposedly, he's actually doing more because he's putting out truth. Nobody has ever sued
He
Julian
has,
Assange
Julian
for
Assange,
libel.
WikiLeaks has
or-
never had to retract a story. They
Yeah,
have never had to retract
and
or
so,
apologize for
but
the story.
this goes back to our old scope, nothing new under the sun, and the big tech social media bias and how they're trying to censor us. You know, back in the day when you had the pamphleteers.
You're
Yeah, I
right,
think
Daniel.
so too. Back when you had the pamphleteers, you know, they had what was it, the movable,
The
printing
movable
press,
type.
the movable type had allowed pamphleteers. It wasn't just controlled by an elite few. It allowed the message of the patriots to get out, and you kind of have the same thing with social media on steroids, and it allows us to amplify our message and get it out. And
Social media is our town square now, and
right,
this is how
and it's a world square. It's like
it's egalitarian. It's accessible by anybody that wants to. We're able to assess. We're able to speak to people
that we
direct
wouldn't
messages,
normally be able to,
you know,
and
on a daily basis.
which is why big tech is desperately trying to control that message, because they know how effective we are. They can't beat us in the arena of ideas, so they have to stifle our message. And the titans of conservatism, while they
carry the water
They-
for decades from the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s and the 21st century.
yeah, they blazed
that-
a trail that
that-
you know that wasn't there, and I'll be forever grateful for that. But now we've reached a new time. The paradigm has shifted with media. The mainstream media is basically blockbuster.
Exactly. Daniel says governments are petrified of social media.
Yeah.
The Arab Spring proved its power.
Right.
Yeah, it's people see, and this is where we want to correlate to the pamphleteers of the 1770s. They brought cohesiveness to the patriots in their fight. The British Empire at the time was probably the big tech of their day.
Right.
They regulated speech by regulating the way print was
Right.
done. Stamp Act is related to this.
And without the new printing press, you would have never had that one major the pamphlet of all pamphlets, which was Common Sense, which basically lit a fire that started the revolution, I think. But you have kind of the same thing going on with social media, with Twitter, with blog posts, with podcasts, and
so we found a great example today in an article we found, and we're going to talk about a book that was written about this. But the article is called Print, the Press, and the American Revolution, and it's by Robert G. Parkinson. You can Google that. And this is a very detailed study of pamphleteers back in the 1770s through the Revolutionary War, and how important that was for cohesiveness and getting the word out to the people back then when we were in the rebellion. And this, to me, Yvonne and I just see a huge correlation between then and now, between what's happening with Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and
Right.
all these. It gives us.
it's the same thing. Nothing new under the sun.
We put it on steroids, like you said.
Except this is way more powerful, and I think they know it.
But we pulled some stuff about what the pamphleteers did. When the Revolutionary War started, there were already about 400 pamphleteers going, and they it was a fairly big nation even back then with just the 13 colonies. But what they brought was a social binding. They were a binding agent for like-minded patriots. They were shut out from the mainstream of elites.
Right.
There's always going to be elites, and so people that are exactly, Daniel. It's why they haven't been trying to
Yeah, I
slander
know.
PewDiePie. He's got 80 million YouTube subscribers.
He's got 80 million YouTube, and the person that's will probably overcome him is like it's the music. It's a music company in India. It's a massive corporation, which you're going to pat yourself on the back because you're going to eventually overcome one man's T-Series. They're a big corporation. PewDiePie is one guy.
So in this study, pamphleteers were the lifeblood of the revolution. They were used to shore up a fragile unity that we had back then. It was fragile because you're spread out. There's a lot of farmers. There's a lot of people just out. There's no way to tie in. There's not a newspaper to go grab real quick, and
Right.
there's not an internet to look at. But right now, we have people all over, especially all over Twitter. It's on
Twitter,
YouTube
yeah.
as well, and Facebook somewhat, but especially on Twitter, there are so many people doing their hard research. Some of them do it for free. They're not. Some of them are asking for donations, and they're independent. They're not part of a big corporation.
But
They
some
don't
of
wear
them are
makeup.
doing it for free.
We don't wear makeup when we broadcast our stuff. We're not looking at a
Well,
teleprompter.
I have makeup.
Well, yeah. Well, I say I don't have makeup
Okay.
on, and so it's not scripted and it's real.
Right.
And it's not.
And people
edited.
like that. They're hungry for that. Like,
And
we don't need this polished, you know.
Edited, fine-tuned message. We're trying to get, just say what we believe, and hopefully you guys can spread this word. And the British tried to use the Stamp Act to control the colonies. The Stamp Act was a social media censorship of today, and
Right.
then the power of print was.
So the Stamp Act, it was a tax on like publications, like wasn't it? Like, so if
I believe on the ink even on the ink.
on
as
the
well.
ink, so it hampered people from getting their message out. It would cost. I don't know what.
Well,
the
and
cost.
in this study, it talks about how especially in the newspaper men back then, they were beholden to the elites, and they were beholden if they didn't have government work or work reprinting the Bible and things, that they struggled, and they relied on the elites for their news, but the elites didn't like them around. So that's why you'd see a lot of taverns and stuff. There would be a
Yeah.
newspaper in the basement or something.
Right.
And the power of print was correcting the disparity and with the resistance, and they were tying the resistance to each other, like social media today. There's a huge disparity, and we're a part of what
And
we're
so
also.
the Stamp Act being, you could correlate it today with big tech censoring us. So they're not taxing us to stifle information now. What they're basically deplatforming us.
And they're
Laura,
doing it to so many. They're doing it. I got 460 followers on Twitter, and they do it to me. I'll tweet something out and I can't see it. I have to go find it. I mean, they're
Right.
doing it to me, and I have the wrong ideas, so
Right.
they're throttling us.
and people like Laura Loomer and Alex Jones. I know a lot of people do not like them, but why do you think they're banning them? It's because they're effective, and so you take away their platform, and you stop the flow. Imagine if
Daniel, going back to Great Britain, he's sick of biased media. The BBC is
BBC
shameful,
is horrible.
and they have to pay the license. The people in Britain are all charged a fee every month by the BBC to pay for something that half of them probably don't even watch anymore.
Right.
And BBC is just like CNN, MSNBC, and all these gross. Even Fox News, they're all just gross propagandists. And over there in England, which is where we're headed if we don't wake up, because they don't have free speech like we do here. They never have. They're paying for their own demise.
right.
And they're paying to be propagandists, just like we're paying colleges to
Yeah.
propagandize the children. So
We're
getting off
paying.
topic
Well,
there.
we're paying the FBI to come after our duly elected president, and the IRS to persecute the Tea Party, and we're kind of all doing the same thing, which was why I think there's a movement all over the world against this oppression. It's like this, all over the world. There's this global movement of the people rising up against the elites, and man, it's just
Wow.
amazing how.
Even in Britain, even if you go use a laptop for broadcast, you
Oh,
still need a
wow.
license.
That's
See, we're headed
incredible.
that way. That's what the left is trying to do to us. And when I say the left, I think the left is evil and they're trying to do some terrible things. The right, the establishment right, is going along with it, or they're part of
Right.
it themselves. And that's why our message is not as strictly, although partisanship's always going to be with us. Partisanship, the right establishment is just as bad. The Republican Party is just as corrupt. All
They
of our
are.
institutions
They are.
corrupt. We were saying are pulled from this study. Podcasts, blogs, and tweets, periscopes, all of the social media. These are the lifeblood of American patriots today. Prison if you fail to pay the £1,000 fine for failure. Man,
The power of these podcast blogs and tweets and periscopes and all of the stuff that's going on social media. I just want to give you two examples of, conservative media, powerful people in the media who have downplayed it and condescended about it You know, one was Glenn Beck. I saw a video that he had, yes, I think it was yesterday on his radio show. He was talking about the Ilhan Omar investigation that Ali Alexander, Laura Loomer, and Jacob Wohl had done, and had found out that her office address, they couldn't find her. What she has listed there. She married her brother. She's very. She has a lot of hate for Jews in her heart, and it was an investigation that they did, and Glenn Beck is talking about it, but he's very, if you go back and watch the video, he's very condescending about it, because he says, we saw this on the internet, on social media, which of course most of the stuff you see on there is wrong, and I'm like, no, that's not necessary. I know there's a lot that is not true on social media, but there's a lot more truth to be found on the internet than, say, traditional media. And he mentions the investigation, and he, even though it turned out to be true, he was like acting like that was a roll of the dice or something. No, that's something that Ali and Laura.
But he ignores the actual players in that.
And he downplayed it and underestimated. And I was like, no, these people are doing great things, and he didn't mention their names, and that tells me a lot. Mm-hmm. For a reason. And then who was the other person I was telling you about that was kind of so Lou Dobbs. Lou Dobbs was ranting, and I love Lou Dobbs. He's one of the few people on Fox that I will tune into, and he had Ronna McDaniel, the GOP chairman on there, and he was ranting and raving, doing his normal. And what he was saying was actually what I feel. But I was sitting here thinking, why wouldn't you have on your show Ali, Laura, and Jacob, who did more than the GOP did in the midterms to stop the steals that were going on? Why would you have her on there? These titans of conservatism complain and whine about the mainstream media, and they're disgust with the GOP for not doing anything. Meanwhile, you have people that are actually doing some things that you won't even mention their names.
Yeah. And part of what we're doing today too is talking about this battle. This battle has been engaged for decades, really, but for the last few years especially, is the Patriots and the Tories of today. The Tories are lined up. They're in formation, and they're fighting this battle. And so many Patriots, I would say latent Patriots, they're not engaged. They're just letting things happen.
Summer soldiers.
They're reading the news or seeing the news and just, maybe they don't like it, but there's nothing happening. Nobody's lining up. And here's what me and Yvonne talked about this afternoon, is that you're going to have to choose. There's going to be a choice, whether you put it off or what. But you need to choose soon, because the battle has been happening for a while now. Apathy is the worst. And the battle, like we said, is between freedom and slavery. And there's no centrist. I just don't think there's a centrist, because when it comes down, when the crap hits the fan, there's not going to be a middle. And go back and look in history and look at all the history books written and the people we know. Who are the great nonpartisans of history? Who are the great centrists? Who can name the great moderate that a lot of history books are written about?
Who you remember are the radical Republicans who abolished slavery, which
even that is could have been back then. They're called radical.
It was a slant. It was a slur.
They're called radical Republicans. And
they were radical because they went against the establishment. So for that matter, maybe we're radical Republicans.
Well, and they were talking about freeing the slaves.
Right.
And that's radical. So there's going to be a choice to be made, because right now you look at Virginia and the state of New York. There's a governor. We've got all this news hitting today, and there's terrible news, and we're going to get to that too. But what's gone off the radar is that the governor of the state of New York passed a law. You can basically kill a baby outside of the womb. The governor of Virginia talked about keeping a baby comfortable after it's delivered, and then deciding, he didn't say kill, but he uses euphemisms, but
right.
deciding, do we kill it now?
Right.
And it's not a person until they say it's a person. And then you find out a few days later that this governor was in a photo with blackface. Now, a lot of people believe, and he copped to it quick, but then he took it back. A lot of people,
He wasn't
next to
in
him in blackface,
he was in the
was a
Klan
person in a
outfit.
Klan outfit. That's gone off, and he's fine. Nothing's happened to him. His lieutenant governor has got very recent allegations, women coming forward saying that he is I mean, not quite a rapist, but close. Nothing. So we can, are you going to choose a side that is okay with killing babies after they're born? And people they do semantics with abortion anyway about certain weeks and when is it life and stuff. But,
I think we could all agree. I mean, I believe it happens at conception, but I think that everyone could agree after you hear the heartbeat, it's alive.
Or if it's sitting on a table and you're keeping it
Oh,
comfortable.
yeah, keeping it comfortable.
But, the people, they're, women and men, all the, families are pregnant and they lose the baby to a miscarriage and they mourn that baby.
Right.
Are they insane because they're mourning something that's not
Right.
alive? I don't think so.
No.
Yes, he said we will make a decision. He said he
yeah.
talks about the
We
mother.
will make
He talks about the mother and the doctor making
a decision now that the
Action.
baby is no longer a part of the mother, which has always been there.
It is supposed to be to
my
protect
body,
the
my
life of the
choice.
mother.
Well, if it's sitting on a table in a some room, I don't think it's your body anymore that we're talking about. And so that goes back to what was that quote about the time that we're in, like the question before us is one of awful moment, and that's the truth. If you can put babies, if you can say what that governor said,
if you can defend it at all,
and you're still the governor, when was that? A month ago? You're still the government. I mean, you're still the governor. Then, at what point these titans of conservatism that won't mention these other conservatives that are doing so much to put points on the board. You won't mention their names. You won't let the name of their names come across your lips. What would change that? What's your red line?
yeah.
And
If that's not a red line, what is?
I want to know, is there a written rule, is there a written clause into your contracts that forbids you from saying certain names? And, if that's the case, would you be able to do a live stream on your own or, a Twitter, a post on Facebook of your own where you're promoting these people that are actually doing productive things?
And if it is the case that people like Rush Limbaugh, Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, all these guys, if Lou Dobbs, if there's a clause in their contract that says you're not going to mention certain people, then you've already taken a knee.
You're not free. Your freedoms are already gone. Mike Cernovich having one of the greatest documentaries done on fake news and how the news is how they manipulate you through what they report and what they don't report. And I can't believe I haven't seen. That'd be perfect on Sean Kennedy.
No mention of
Lou
anybody.
Dobbs, Laura Ingraham. Rush Limbaugh on his show. All these people want to see. They know that the fake news media is an enemy of the people, and yet you have this documentary that was just produced by, an independent guy, and you won't mention his name.
He put up his money. He put up his time. He put out a call for donations, and Yvonne donated to it, and I didn't know it at the time, and I would have donated.
And I think I donated max $75. It wasn't even that much, but it was crowdfunded.
Here's where our message. We get back to our message. We want you guys listening and anybody who sees this and spread the word and go to redpillsentinel.com and read the blog posts that we have in there. We have links in there too for this. We want these titans of conservatism to reach down and help there's thousands of people. These are our new pamphleteers. Thousands of people doing incredible work, research. You can see it they post it. They
They're doing
show
better
you where
work
they
than
pull
the
it from.
FBI or the DOJ. Undercover Hubert. Who
Yeah.
tweeted that out today? Kellyanne Conway retweeted a thread by Undercover Hubert on the was it the dossier or the something to do with Trump Russia or something. There's all these people that are doing such great work, and if their message were amplified,
And just like those signers of the Declaration of Independence back in 1776, most of those guys were killed in horrible ways. They pledged their lives, and a lot of them paid the ultimate price for it. And today we don't have that. We've got the Titans carry the water for a while, but now they're not bringing up the rest because it's all scaled up now. We have so many pamphleteers now,
right?
and there's thousands of them, and they're in semi-obscurity.
And you have the Mark Levins who got a new show on Fox. You have Rush Limbaugh on his show, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, and all they do, it seems, day after day, night after night, you're whining and complaining about the mainstream media, who, let's face it, the mainstream media right now is Blockbuster. They're done. Something else is going to rise up in the ashes. And we could be helping those, Ali created Culture,
Culture.com.
CULTTTURE, which covers the personalities on the right that are putting points on the board because they were tired of the left and anybody that writes about them smearing them. And so it became an outlet that reported on them accurately and amplified that. You could speak about that. You could lift that up. We know that the mainstream media is fake. We know that they lie. I don't need you to play another clip of the MSNBC.
That goes into our plea to them, is let's hasten the demise of this conglomerate of media that lies to us every day.
Right.
Is ignore them. And people, if you don't know, I remember a year ago they showed CNN and ABC, even Fox, everybody was reporting how 300 editors across the country penned this letter to Trump, and they were going off on Trump about something. And they make it sound like a big, diverse group of people. When you look at newspapers and mainstream media television, they're all owned by just 3 or 4 entities. And when you've got all the Commercial Appeal in Memphis and the Charlotte Observer and whatever, and the Miami Herald and all these big newspapers, so many of them are owned by one company. Right. And so saying 300 editors,
you've seen one, you've seen
it's
them
not
all.
Diverse. It's not. They're all owned by the same company. But what's beautiful about Twitter and YouTube and Facebook to a lesser degree is all these independents.
Right.
And they talk to each other somewhat. Some of them don't, but they do their own thing, and they report. Some of them do different ways. Some of them just report. Some of them periscope all the time. Some of them do these long threads on Twitter showing, all the research they've done. So what we're asking is to get this message to the Rush Limbaughs and the Tucker Carlson, the Lou Dobbs, Sean Hannity. Stop. Just ignore them. Stop.
And build up the people that are on your side, who have been in your audience, who have watched you for years and admired you and helped, been a part of the people that built you up and created your audience, and start lifting them up. A rising tide lifts all boats, and that's one of the things that I love about this movement on our side is these people that have gotten big, like Mike Cernovich and Ali and Laura Loomer, when she was on Twitter, is they would interact with you. You could have a conversation with them on Twitter. They would retweet you. Whereas you're talking I have tweeted several times or tried to interact with Bo Schnerdley, who is Rush Limbaugh. I know Rush Limbaugh's not active on Twitter, but Bo Schnerdley, his call screener, is. And he doesn't have that many followers. And I know, so your mentions can't be so high, but there's no interaction. And I think that Rush has stated that he doesn't get Twitter. He said that his brother gets it, and he's tried.
He calls it a sewer, and it is. It can be a sewer.
It's just like the world.
But the world is a sewer.
There's good and bad in everything, and there's a whole bunch of good that I think that he's missing out and not utilizing. And that if he ever does get it, if it does ever click with him, and he starts uniting with a lot of these soldiers on our side that are in the trenches, I mean, it'll be all over
And you know, we had a lot about pamphleteers, but you know what? We could talk about what's going on today with this story out of New Zealand. It's freaking tragic and it's horrible, but it sounds too perfect, set up for what the media has always wanted to say, that the biggest threat to mankind are white supremacists.
Right.
And they're taking, this guy is the ultimate troll, and I don't think he's by himself. And it could turn out that he's actually an ISIS guy himself.
Right.
It turns out that, I don't know if this is for sure, but it seems like that the mosque that he attacked was full of Muslims that don't agree with the ISIS-type ideology.
They weren't radical Muslims.
And this guy that did this shooting had no social media presence before January, before a few months ago. And ISIS does that. They use the social media platforms to get their message across. And false flag or whatever you want to call it, it just sounds too neat and too set up for the mainstream media because they're parroting. You know, this guy's being called a white supremacist, and this shows why we need gun control in America. You know, AOC tweeting her bullshit out.
Yeah, and then they call out and name PewDiePie and Candace Owens, two people that they
this guy's supposed to be a white
trying
supremacist.
to take down forever.
But he says in his manifesto that Candace Owens is his biggest inspiration. She's a black conservative.
Yeah.
So square that one. And there's little things all the time. They'll lie about the little things all the time. Why
are you going to believe them on the little things?
You know, I always use the example of CNN with Trump's visit to Japan and had the emperor there and they were feeding the fish, and they clipped the video to show Trump just dumping the fish food. And, oh my God, he's going to kill the fish. Oh, Trump is a horrid. He doesn't even care about fish. And they clipped out the part where he was just following the lead of the emperor of Japan because
so
that's what he
in order
did.
for them to have done that story, they had to clip that so
They
that
knew what they were
they
doing.
knew what they were doing. So why are we going to believe them on anything else? So why, Rush, are you going to play a clip of MSNBC when they're all out total fake news? They don't need any more attention than they already have.
We already know what they're
And people say, well, you got to tune into the left to find out what they're saying. You can find out what they're saying. You don't have to.
We know what they're going to say.
There's different ways of
We know what they're
finding
gonna
out
say.
what they're saying. You don't have to amplify their message. So
You know, I just think like we wanted to say, Ann Coulter, stop going on
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher's show.
You
That
know,
guy's-
Bill Maher defended Mary Kay Letourneau, 35-year-old, having sex with a 12-year-old.
One of her students.
He not only defended, he fervently defended her. His production company is
Yeah,
titled
the name
Kid
of-
Love Productions.
Yeah.
Love Productions. So
Yeah, that's not scary.
why go on there and legitimize them?
And then, of course, throughout all this story today, of course, the Twitter trends, one of them is James Gunn rehired as director at Disney for,
No, you can have that.
for the third installment.
Oh yeah,
of-
James Gunn, and James Gunn.
Everybody's happy about that.
Director of he did I think it was Galaxy.
Guardians of the
Guardians of the Galaxy, and then all of those tweets joking about child rape that Mike Cernovich, Jack Sobick, and Ali outed. And I know the left has been mad ever since. And I know they think that getting him back and rehiring it is like hurts Mike Cernovich. But no, it doesn't hurt Mike Cernovich. It hurts children. This man
Disney
should never work around children again.
Disney has a problem with pedophilia.
You know, Bryan Singer, yeah, the list goes, we could get sidetracked.
They just
on that.
arrested the man a couple months ago for the Nickelodeon or Disney
Yeah,
show.
Nickelodeon. They've got a
Soliciting.
huge, so I guess they just waited until they thought they could do it. But all this is going to do is it's going to focus more attention back on the degeneracy of James Gunn. The dude is a sick dude. You know, this wasn't about some inappropriate comments. You don't joke. The only people that joke about child rape are pedophiles.
Yeah. And it's not one or two tweets. It's thousands.
Yeah, he deleted over 10,000. I don't know how many of those were related to that, but
I had them saved on an old phone and it did transfer, but I had old tweets of him. They're disgusting.